This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A 75-year-old Winnipeg woman died last July at a personal care home here in Winnipeg after a healthcare aide tied up her call button cord. The woman couldn't reach it to get help to put her oxygen supply back in. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout has the story.
Kathleen McCarthy was full of life. The 75-year-old was born in Moncton, New Brunswick. She moved to Vancouver in her 20s, then to Winnipeg in the mid-1980s. Kathleen loved to be in the company of others and had a great sense of humor. 10 years ago, she suffered a brain aneurysm, which left her dependent on oxygen, depressed, and confined to a bed. Not long after, McCarthy moved into the Kildonan long-term care home.
There's never a word of complaint about the home, never a negative word of the home.
Last year, Bill McCarthy got word his sister had died. The oxygen tube had fallen out of her nose and she couldn't get it back in. She also couldn't call staff for help because a healthcare aide had tied the call bell cord out of her reach 2 hours earlier.
I'm sure that if that buzzer was taken from Kathy, the person who took it from him was doing it for the greater good.
Winnipeg police were called in to investigate and wanted to charge 3 healthcare aides with criminal negligence causing death. The aide that tied the call bell cord and 2 others who knew about it but didn't intervene. Police referred the case to the Crown, but the Crown didn't authorize charges. We don't know why.
According to court filings obtained by CBC News, Winnipeg police got a court order for the internal call box records the night McCarthy died. She was known to pull on the call bell cord about every 10 minutes. So by getting a record of the calls, it would show investigators when the cord was out of reach and for how long. Laura Tamblin-Watts is with CanAge, a national seniors advisory group.
It's important to remember that there's a larger systemic problem at play. If this is a one-off because staff were incredibly stretched, didn't have education, were trying to take care of too many residents, that's not something that we can solve with one single criminal charge against a person.
She says there is no excuse for taking a call bell away and believes workers should be talking to their director of care if they're unable to deal with a high-needs resident. She says, unfortunately, since the start of the pandemic, personal care homes have lost 30 to 35% of their staff.
And so I think what we're seeing more and more is staff trying to make do, trying to stretch their time amongst lots of people, which, as we know, means a lesser quality of care for everyone.
Rivera, the for-profit company that owns the home, says as soon as it learned what had happened, it called police, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, and McCarthy's family to let them know what had happened. Neither the union representing the aides or Rivera will say if the workers are still employed. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
If you have a tip for the CBC I-Team, you can email them at iteam@cbc.ca or call the confidential tip line at 204-788-3744. CBC Manitoba has a team up in Thompson this week, meeting and connecting with the community to hear your stories. It's part of our northern tour that we're calling Communities in Focus. Tonight, CBC is even hosting a community feast in the city with our Emily Brass standing by. Hi, Emily. Tell us more about what's happening
Janet.
there tonight. Nice to see you.
Well, nice to see you too. I'm here at the Mama We Talk Friendship Center in downtown Thompson. It's a nonprofit group that works with urban Indigenous people, and the event's just getting underway. You can kind of feel the energy building in the room, you know, as people show up and start chatting with each other. Also, when you walk in the room, you can smell the delicious food being prepared. On the menu is roast beef and turkey, bannock, and a whole bunch of other fixings. And on the guest list are many of the superstar volunteers that you can meet up here in Thompson. And one of them is here with me right now, Bobby Montan. She's on CBC's Community Advisory Board. Hi, Bobby.
Hi.
So you're a busy woman. You're involved in so many different things. Tell us a bit about some of the projects you work on.
Oh, well, that I have worked on has been multiple things. Operation Red Nose, which is starting up again. And there's Red Cross, there's tons and tons and tons of stuff and places, and including the Friendship Center.
Yeah, tell us a bit about what happens here at Mama We Talk.
Again, I'd just love to say lots of stuff happening. Educational programming, there's traditional teachings, there's housing, things like daycares and elders programming, and just tons and tons. A Northern Circle of Youth for the youth.
Yeah, big focus on the family here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And also tell us about, you've been here working on many things, Red Cross, as you said. In fact, you're still working with Red Cross right now, aren't you?
I still volunteer with the Red Cross when my health allows. I still do things like I coordinate the community Christmas Day parade or Christmas Santa parade. So that's my next big project now.
I've noticed that just about everyone in town here knows you. When I mention your name, everyone knows who you are. And I would like people out there in Manitoba and around Canada to know more about Thompson. What would you want them to know about your city?
I want them to know that it's a bustling community. There's a lot of things that are going on here that are totally top secret. It seems like nobody's talking about them, or that there's educational opportunities. The University College of the North has opened up so much experiences, so many opportunities for people. There's recreational activities. Of course, we're in the north, so there's fishing. Summer and winter, there's fishing. We have the largest marina in Manitoba, which is out just south of us at Paint Lake. And cross-country ski trails. We have a ski hill. We just the Thompson Trailbreakers, who are responsible for maintaining our snowmobile trails here throughout the whole region. So they actually connect us with other trails in the north.
And a lot of beautiful artwork around town.
Yes, absolutely. There's all kinds of things.
Vibrant city.
Yes, we have a choir that's starting up again.
Okay.
The community band through the high school, which I understand is getting a new band room. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming out and joining us.
For sure. Hi, Janet.
And so, yes, that was Bobby Montan, as we said, a great community volunteer who's helped us. And we're about to get things started, and that's going to begin with an opening prayer by Elder Jack Robinson. We'll introduce everyone to our new Northern reporter. Ethan Butterfield is here, and he's just moved up last weekend, and he's going to be sticking around and reporting on more stories from here in Thompson. I'm going to talk about my podcast, Type Taboo, Diary of a New Diabetic, and also a little bit about what it's like to be a reporter for CBC. So, Janet, on that note, it's time to get this party started.
Emily, thank you. Please say hi to Bobby and Elder Jack for me.
Thank you.
That's Winnipeg mayoral candidate Robert Falcon-Ouellette wants the city to do more to support veterans. His proposals include building a multi-story residence with services for veterans who are homeless.
You know, on Monday, October 17th, Sergeant Tommy Prince will be having his stamp being released in his honor at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. There will be a number of Indigenous veterans and all veterans coming out to do that honoring, but he died homeless on our city streets. That should never happen.
The Homes for Heroes Foundation estimates there are about 200 veterans who are homeless in Winnipeg right now. Ouellette wants the city to offer free transit service, parking, and access to recreation services to veterans. He also would like to see a memorial park built dedicated to veterans of the war in Afghanistan. The latest COVID-19 numbers from the province came out today. They cover the week from October 2nd to 8th. During that week, another 13 Manitobans died due to the disease. That's 4 fewer people than died in the previous week. Hospitalizations also went down. 73 people with COVID-19 were admitted to hospital as opposed to 77 the week before. 14 people with the virus were admitted to ICU. That's 1 more than the previous week. And the province expanded eligibility today so that Manitobans aged 12 to 17 can get the Pfizer bivalent vaccine. Boosters help protect people from developing a serious case of COVID-19. Parents and guardians can book appointments for youth at provincial clinics, pharmacies, and doctors' offices starting tomorrow morning. A CBC investigation is raising doubts about the ancestry claims of one of Canada's most prominent and successful Indigenous scholars and leaders. Former Saskatchewan judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond has been a high-profile voice on behalf of Indigenous communities for decades. But as the CBC's Jeff Leo has learned, her claims to be a Treaty Indian and to have Indigenous ancestors don't appear to be supported by documentation. Her story illustrates the complex and evolving debate around Indigenous identity in this country.
In 1999, Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond was already a well-established national figure when she sat down for an interview with Pamela Wallen.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond, she is the first Native judge in Saskatchewan.
Mary Ellen Turpel is also with us.
Turpel-Lafond leapt to national prominence earlier in that decade when she served as constitutional advisor to the Assembly of First Nations during the contentious Charlottetown Accord debates.
So it's going to be very difficult to say exactly what the Native vote is.
The Harvard and Cambridge-educated legal scholar has served as a law professor, a judge, and a children's advocate. And she's received honorary doctorates from 10 Canadian universities.
Over the past decade, she has been the voice of those who cannot be heard, particularly those from Aboriginal communities.
My father's a Cree Indian from Norway House, Manitoba.
What status does that give you?
I'm a Treaty Indian.
93-year-old Joe Keeper, a Cree man from Norway House, knew Turpel-Lafond's father, Billy. They went to school together in the 1930s. Keeper said he'd never heard this claim that Billy was Cree.
He was not an Indian boy, he was a white boy. The first I've heard of Billy being Indian is when I've heard it from you.
Turpel-Lafond says her dad was raised by her grandparents, William and Eleanor Turpel, who were both of European ancestry. They moved to Norway House in the late 1920s when Billy's father was hired by Indian Affairs as the local doctor. He served the Indian Hospital and the Indian Residential School.
There was a Dr. Turpel at Norway House when I was just a boy. The Turpels were not Cree. They were white people.
Turpel-Lafond declined an interview with CBC, but in an email she insisted her father is Cree, though she wouldn't say who she thinks his biological parents were. She would only hint at family secrets. Now, CBC reached out to her sister, and she said she thinks that her dad was possibly adopted from a Cree family by her grandparents or was the product of an affair between her grandpa and a Cree woman. So CBC went hunting for records on its own. It discovered this newspaper announcement, which says William and Eleanor Turpel are Billy's mom and dad. A baptismal record says the same thing.
In that normal way of doing things, as an historian, when you see all these records line up, it would be very hard for me as an historian to not conclude that the boy born in Victoria was, in fact, the son of William and Eleanor Turpel.
Turpel-Lafond also claims to be a Treaty Indian, but CBC has found no evidence to support that claim. And she has declined to provide her status card, or even say if she has one. Indigenous scholars and politicians say there's a growing problem in this country of non-Indigenous people taking away opportunities from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people by improperly claiming Indigenous ancestry. Winona Wheeler says because Turpel-Lafond has had a high-profile career while claiming to be a Treaty Indian, she owes the public some answers.
People have the right to know that, who you're related to. So why wouldn't you be forthcoming about that? If she can't identify her Indigenous lineage, who's to say it even exists?
Turpel-Lafond says CBC's questions about her ancestry are offensive and are an invasion of her privacy. She points out that she's been accepted into her husband's First Nations community, the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, here in Saskatchewan. And high-profile supporters of Turpel-Lafond, both inside and outside of that community, say if she's been accepted by a First Nations community, that should be good enough for everyone. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
The group that runs Brandon's homeless shelter says it is at a crisis point. There are too many people needing a place to sleep and not enough beds. Samaritan House Ministries held an emergency meeting last night to try to figure out how to manage. Executive Director Barbara McNish says the shelter has served close to 400 unique clients, individuals, this year. That's the highest number ever.
When we saw the numbers and looked at the contacts that we had, maybe not staying, but the contacts we had, some of them were 55, and we're like, oh, if they need to stay, we're in trouble.
The shelter is the only overnight space for adults in Brandon experiencing homelessness. Members of the Interlake Reserve's Tribal Council are calling a provincial fund a slap in the face. Earlier this month, the province announced a $15.9 million economic development fund. It was in connection to the $600 million Lake St. Martin, Lake Manitoba flood channel project. That fund will be shared among 39 communities.
That's a drop in the bucket. What they owe us, they can keep their $15 million. As far as I'm concerned, for Lake Manitoba, I won't be applying for a penny of that, because I don't think that I deserve to have one slice of bread while these other communities are getting crumbs.
The province says the fund is to support growth in the whole area, separate from the channel build. Meteorologist John Sauder joins us on the day when we saw our first snow of the season in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we did. We knew it was coming, though, right?
Yes, you warned us.
What a change. I've got some pictures to show you because this viewer was taking photos the other day when it was beautiful outside. This is from Vipan Sikri, and then just a couple days later, the same shot looked just like that one. That was taken this morning, of course, and it's just a dusting of snow. There's not much to be had here. I don't think shovels are out by any stretch, at least not here in the Winnipeg area. A lot of this is melting on contact. We've got 0 for a temperature, dew point at 0, so you know the relative humidity at the surface is up to 100%, and we've lost our gust factor here. It's been 30 gusting to 50, and then kind of settling down, shifting to the west through the early part of the evening, but our winds are going to go back to the northwest overnight. I wanted to show you the upper level flow one more time, because if I put this in motion right through the weekend, you can see that the blue represents the upper trough, and these nice warmer colors, the greens out to the west of us, that's the upper ridge. By Tuesday, we start to see that ridge kind of getting into northern Manitoba, maybe into the south a little bit, so there is hope. Everything's kind of shifting over to the east. But this is what the radar has been looking like all day today. Of course, satellite shows us the cloud cover. Radar shows us what's falling out of the cloud. And we've got snow here, and you can see these blues and darker blues. That is snow mixing with rain. A lot of that happening down near Emerson through the day today, but all snow just melting as it lands here in Winnipeg. We still have the snow squall warning in effect for this shaded area right up against the shore of the lake. The rest of the white shaded area is a snow squall watch. So not much change there, just the numbers. It's now talking about 10 to 15 centimeters of accumulation along that eastern edge of Lake Winnipeg, that is. So Thursday night, as we go ahead into Friday, we still have a chance for some flurries overnight and into the morning hours. A lot of this is lake effect flurries coming right out of the north. And then as we move through Friday, it transitions into more of showers rather than flurries. And then Friday night, the next low starts to circulate more moisture down into the region. And we get a mixture of rain and snow. This is 2:30 in the morning on Saturday. So Saturday turns out to be a day with occasional showers. May still see some of that action on Sunday in the form of some flurries, but there is also some clearing to happen on Sunday with a sun cloud mix in the afternoon. Projected rainfall next 48 hours. You can see the weather models are pulling in 10 to maybe even 17 millimeters and kind of in that same swath. Snowfall projections not all that impressive, simply because a lot of this is landing on the ground and melting. So maybe a couple of centimeters in Winnipeg, and I think that would only be in the grassy areas. Wet flurries tonight at 0 +1 with wet flurries in the morning. Winds pick up again and then drop off in the later part of the day. And we get to 6 degrees. That's why we'll see more showers than flurries on into the afternoon. And still unsettled as we head through the weekend. Windy both days. Winds pick up again Saturday afternoon. Northwest 30 to 50 right through Sunday. But there's hope. Few sunny breaks on Sunday, back to sunshine on Monday, much warmer in the 7-day forecast, and that's coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip. your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
Don't forget to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. You'll find our whole newscast there. Watch it whenever you like. You'll also find selected stories.